Magandang gabi. Ako po si Trixie Cruz-Angeles. And this is Luminous Live. We're still in Davao City. Medyo extended yung stay namin. So, baka gabi-gabi tayo magla-live as long as we're still here. We'll be on Carabola tomorrow morning. So, huwag kakalimutan, join us on DWIC 882 AM. Magandang gabi sa lahat ng nakatambay dito. Rosel Erpelo, Roberto Nocum, John Brian Monterola, Dos Simply, Ray Pagara, Edwin Tu, Tio Sabido, Melvin Munar, Pinay Paparazzi, William Garay, Flomen Ferrer, JD, Benedict Paul Polistico, Apple 4, Rain Pinebook, Pinay Paparazzi, Chev, Body Shot, Carlos Vivi, Raquel Reyes, Lansky Nobleza Valdenebro, Imelda Tenedero, patingin yung mga nasa Facebook. Narina Carr, Teresita Rangel, tama ba yan? Peka Peka. Presi Peralta, Shalene Calanza, hi Jen Aquino, Colette Romares Suzuki, etc. Magandang gabi. So we're talking about it's National Heroes Day. So we posted on Luminous 2 examples of our present day heroes. Of course, yung one of na sa mga tinaguriang heroes of Marawi is Lieutenant Colonel Montano Almodovar. He is commander on the ground of the 3rd Scout Ranger Battalion. And na hinanap siya talaga sa ilang beses pumunta si PRRD sa Marawi, talagang hinanap siya. And it was due to, of course, it was always a team AFP effort to rid Marawi of terrorists. Pero ang kitang-kita natin dito, and of course who was very patient in explaining later on the strategies involved in Marawi, was of course Lieutenant Colonel Mon Almodovar. So, mabuhay ka Mon. And we also posted about Ruben Guinolbay, pero later na yon. Meanwhile, ang nangyari is yesterday lumabas po yung decision ng NCIP on Apo Whang-Od. And medyo yung suspicions natin seem to be, how do you call this, held up by the NCIP. Ang sinasabi ng NCIP is, and let's put that on our screen. Wait lang. I forgot to share my screen. Let's put that on our screen. Yung kay Apo Whang-Od. And there you go. Alright. So, ito yung decision ng NCIP. Sabi nila after review of the contract, primarily yung contract kasi at kino-contest dito. Apo Whang-Od did not consent nor was made aware to teach the Kalinga art of tattooing on Nas Daily. So, ang basehan po ng decision na ito ay yung mga interviews with the community. Apo Whang-Od is not aware of any contract and she did not affix her thumb mark in any contract for this account. No provision of the contract was explained or discussed with her. The contract was grossly onerous on the part of Apo Whang-Od. Dito tayo medyo nakatutok kanina. The contract states that NAS Academy has exclusive ownership of any content that the show would produce, including the likeness, image, voice, etc. of Apo Whang-Od, and such ownership is in perpetuity. Ang weird, no? Kasi usually, ang copyright is only 50 years after the death of the author. Okay? But in this case, who is they are the author of the video, but not the author of the work contained in the video. But what they're saying here is si Apo Whang-Od basically transfers the ownership, at least of the images of her own art. So weird dito. Medyo weird dito. Kasi base dun sa ating copyright law, yung community that owns the copyright to the images that are produced by Apo Whang-Od's tattooing, well, it's owned by the community and yun ang in perpetuity. Okay? ordinary copyright of artists, let's say gumawa ako ng kanta o gumawa ako ng painting, ang copyright niyan is in existence only for my lifetime and then 50 years thereafter para kumita naman yung mga heirs ko, di ba? So, but in the case of indigenous peoples, it exists forever because it's owned by the community and technically the community exists as long as these people exist. Diba? Um, dito, uh, inclusive of the right of alteration, which is unusual. The right of alteration and the right to assign and transfer the same without consent. So, normally kasi, kapag nag-a-appear ka in a photograph and all that, kailangan yan ng special permission, di ba? And since you, a person like myself, I own the rights to my own face. If somebody uses my own face in something else and I don't object, then that's assumed that I gave the right to use that face. Pero when you're making money off my face, I can actually ask you to stop. Diba? So in copyright, there are two kinds of rights, what we call the economic right and the moral right. Dun sa economic right, basically, it's the right to, how do you call this? To earn money, tama? To earn money from your work. And the moral right is the right to the integrity of the work and the right, which means you can't, ikaw lang, yung author lang ang pwede mag-alter, pwede mag-destroy. And the right to be credited with that work uh, forever. Now, copyright can be transferred. It's the same with the indigenous peoples. Pero if i-compare natin yung copyright dun sa ordinary na copyright, pag tina-transfer mo yung rights na yun, kailangan it is in writing, in a separate contract. Kunwari, merong mga katulad nito, the right to film, the right to, to produce a film where she's teaching and so on is a different agreement. So the agreement to transfer the copyright, even assuming that Apo Whang-Od owns it, has to be written in a separate contract. So dito, hindi pa nga na-include dito sa decision ng NCIP. But ako, that's my theory, hindi siya kasama stated specifically doon sa sa batas ng NCIP and the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act. But ang ina-assume ko dito is dapat maliwanag yung pag-transfer ng copyright ng tribo. And it should have been contained at least in a separate agreement para alam ng community na ito ang ginagawa, tina-transfer yung copyright of the image of their own cultural expression. Apo Whang-Od stated that the provisions of the contract were not explained to them except they were made to sign the contract and release such. Contract of filming, interview, photography, and release of such. When the validation team compared the thumb mark affixed by Apo Whang-Od in the contract to that of one she affixed in a clean piece of paper, there is an apparent disparity. The same is now the subject of forensic study. So dito, it might indicate some kind of fraud. 'Di ba? Kung hindi may nag-thumb mark do'n, tapos sinasabi nila thumb mark ni Apo Whang-Od pero it is not hers, then that would be certainly a mark of fraud or some kind of falsification. The art of tattooing is a cultural expression. Matagal na natin sinasabi to. And it is practiced by the ICC's IPs of Kalinga. Teaching of said cultural manifestations or expression is, hold on, then I have to take care of some administrative things. Uh, 2 seconds. Can you send money to, wait, I forgot to send money to the house dinner. Okay. Sorry, sorry. I should have put that on mute. Hold on. Sandali. Na ano ko. Hang on, give me 2 seconds. Okay, there we go. Um, Sabi ni Hoven, exploitation talaga gusto ni Nas Daily. Asa na kaya yung mga defenders niya ngayon? Lalo na yung Siopaw na nagsasabi na kailangan dapat alamin muna ang buong storya bago mag-comment and so on. Huwag tayong mang-away ha. Okay, but first, wait. Is there some kind of exploitation here? Hindi namin sinasabi yun, pero definitely may mga shortcuts dito on the IPRA law. If the community had been considered, if the community's feelings had been considered, edi sana walang issue. Di ba? Ah, mute na naman, sandali, sandali. My apologies kasi, we get interrupted by Grab drivers all the time. Okay. No, guys, okay lang, okay lang. Eto, may sound na tayo ha. May sound tayo. Alright, ulitin po natin. I'm sorry, I'm so distracted. Medyo napaaga kasi nga itong live na ito and now all of these administrative concerns are coming forward. So, ano na naman ito? Bakit may issue na naman tayo? One more time. Nakakabaliw. Alam niyo yung kasabihan na if something can go wrong, it will. O that's what's happening right now. Okay, balik tayo dun sa tanong ni Hoven. Exploitation talaga gusto ni Nas Daily. Asa na kaya yung mga defenders niya ngayon, etc. Alright. Whether or not there's exploitation, we're not sure. Because the final determination could also possibly be by the court or it will be determined by the NCIP later on in an administrative proceeding. Ngayon, ang sinasabi ni Nas is that they were not given the opportunity to answer. Yung investigation na ginawa ng NCIP was only with the community pero hindi daw sila tinanong at bahagi daw ito ng due process. Ako, there are two ways to think about this. Number one is the only opinion really that matters is the community. Kasi sinabi na ni Nas Daily, based on dun sa mga sinasabi nila before, is that they asked permission. So knowing what they had already made public based on their statements, tinanong nila yung community. Pero ako, kung ako sila, kung ako yung NCIP, it wouldn't hurt to get the side of Nas Daily also. Maganda yon. Ah, okay. Pero, well, let's see. Ito ang initial findings ng NCIP. If itong sinanas are going to contest the findings, they can take it to court later on. And then in the court, sasabihin, sige NCIP, sabihin ninyo yung side ninyo, tapos kayo, Mr. Nas, sabihin ninyo yung side ninyo. At doon magkakaroon na rin ng due process there. Pero ako, para sa akin, they can comply pwede pa naman sila mag-comply, 'di pumunta sila sa community, uulitin lang nila yung kanilang proseso kasi medyo shortcut naman talaga. Okay? Ah, ah, okay. Ano pa yung mga questions ninyo? Gusto gayahin ni Nas ang ginawa ng mga Kowalski kay Bob Ross sa kanyang work, pati kanyang name. Oh my gosh, greediness to the highest level. Well, yun, well, I'm not sure if that's what they intend or talagang hindi nila alam yung batas at tumuloy-tuloy lang sila. But yes, I agree na may basis naman yung sinasabi ng ibang tao that there's a possibility of exploitation here. Ayun nga lang, sinasabi nila kasama naman yung pamilya, ito naman si Apo Whang-Od and so on, and everything that was explained to them. Pero para sa akin, the mere fact na ginamit ni Apo Whang-Od was her thumbprint, that should have put them on notice na sila po ay na si Apo ay possibly illiterate, and therefore kailangan ng mas matinding pag-e-explain sa kanya, and there has to be evidence of that explanation, na kailangan may disinterested third party na translate, nag explain and so on, and that this explanation must be fully documented para naiintindihan niya. Right? Ah, Sabi ni Mona, okay lang, naiintindihan ko yan, ang importante nakaabot sa live. Pasensya na po ha, nai-interrupt tayo ng mga ganitong mga considerations, pasensya na. Pero kinuha na po dun sa baba. So, okay. Ano pa, may mga tanong pa po ba kayo dito kay Apo Whang-Od? So what do we have to remember when dealing with the NCIPs? With the NCIP, with the IPs, I apologize for that. When dealing with indigenous peoples, you ask permission from the community, you ask permission from the NCIP. When all else fails, make sure the community knows. Kasi minsan, and we have to admit this, the NCIP can sometimes be difficult to deal with. And sometimes even the community and the NCIP have their own problems communicating with each other. You can avoid getting caught in that, because ultimately what the law requires is consultation or approval or agreement with the community, as well as with the culture bearer herself. In this case, the culture bearer is Apo Whang-Od. So siya yung artist. Kailangan may consent niya, may consent ng community. Kasi yun po ang naka-require dun sa Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act. The NCIP is an administrative agency. They don't have to give their consent, because the consent is derived from the consent of the community. Ang importante yung consent ng community. Eto, sabi ni Ma'am Karen, si Orion, sabi emotional daw, nagagalit kagad mga Pilipino at react daw kay Nas na walang gathering daw ng facts at saka manghusga sa post ni KLC. Ayun, kinuyog siya ng mga nag-comment at nag-copy-paste na lang ng response niya, pero pinalitan pangalan ng lahat ng netizens na sinagot-sagot niya. Ang resulta, NCIP concludes possible exploitation nga. Ano ngayon? Congrats kay attorney at sinabon niya dati na feeling all-knowing, ang layo naman ang sagot niya sa dahilan. Bakit galit mga Pilipino? Okay, well, let's not get into personalities here, kasi hindi yun yung mahalaga. Ang mahalaga ay yung argumento. Ang argumento natin is, simple lang naman ang nire-require ng batas, yung consultation with the community, or the community's agreement or permission, or yung waiver ng permission na yon. That's a safeguard nga. Yung permission na yon ay safeguard na hindi na-exploit yung isang miyembro ng community. Meron din safeguards to prevent exploitation of the entire community, but that wasn't the issue here. So it was Apo Whang-Od. And there were several instances now that there were attempts to exploit Apo Whang-Od. So people were naturally defensive. Kailangan defend natin itong si Apo Whang-Od, because she is revered not just in her community but even elsewhere, 'di ba? Maraming nagpupunta sa kanya para magpatattoo, and she's recognized as one of the more famous indigenous tattoo artists, kung tama yung term na 'yon, 'di ba? Ito, hang on, one more All right, back to the lecture. Pasensya na uli. All right, let's see this one. If Apo Whang-Od dies, sino ang may owner ng works niya? What do you mean, sino ang owner ng works niya? She's a tattoo artist. The artist that tattoos are on another person's body. This is not an ordinary artwork where it's on a canvas or something. Okay, now I have to deal with pocket calls also. Pasensya na. So, ang tattoo kasi, hindi yan katulad ng ibang artwork. It's on the body of another person. So, the tattoo is actually owned by the person whose body it's printed on. 'Di ba? So, hindi po yan issue when it comes to tattoos. Now, if you're talking about the images of the tattoos, then the image itself or the design of the tattoos, that belongs to the community. Ah. Eto, another point of view. To be fair, may point naman si Orion. Ang sinasabi lang niya is for us to be more critical in doing our research before coming up with a conclusion, and I see nothing wrong with that. All right. Liz C says, finally was able to find time. At least I can watch and stay until this live is done. Uy, Toro. Ay, thank you. Would NCIP's press release be enough to ask the government to declare NAS persona non grata? It should be the community. So it will be also based on the recommendation of the community. Ultimately, kasi the NCIP will not decide for the community. If the community feels that, that he has been exploitative, this team has been exploitative, then they should manifest it. They should be, able to express it. And if they recommend that, then the NCIP can help them pass the necessary tribal pronouncements, di ba? What if pagpatuloy pa rin nila? Paano matitigil? TTRO natin, nila, sorry, natin, ng NCIP. Kasi sa totoo lang, if they use the footage and it belongs to somebody else and the contract kasi is deemed void. So, because of the failure to actually get consent. So, this would be, yan ang tunay na act of exploitation kapag ginamit nila yon tapos may question on the consent that was given for the use of the work. So, in that case, pwede silang ma-TRO. Ngayon, alam ko na marami sa inyo na naghahanap ng criminal case for this one. And it's actually a testament to most of you na ang hinihingi nyo lang, ang hinahanap nyo lang is yung itong persona non grata declaration. But really, what is persona non grata declaration? It's simply the manifestation that this person is not welcome here. What is important siguro is to make sure, for example, with the Bureau of Immigrations, that this person is, has been, how do you call this, detrimental, has committed a grievous wrong to one of our indigenous people's indigenous cultural communities, and therefore should be barred from the country. How is it? If ever mag-file ng kaso ang IPs, how are they going to get jurisdiction over NAS daily? Well, the jurisdiction, of course, is limited to here, di ba? To this country. Ang wino-worry ko, as pinoint out nga ng NCIP, is that the venue that was placed for litigation in case there is a problem with the contract is in Singapore.
Ineffective naman yung contract eh.
But yun nga, since the contract itself is void, even the venue is void. May nagtanong earlier on, kung maaari ba, pwede ba yon ilagay yung venue sa ibang lugar? Yes, venue can be one of those things that can be agreed upon in a contract. Thank you. Dinner. So let me check your other Ito. Ang sarap ng hummus. October 8 punta daw si Handan sa DWIZ. Oh my gosh, nalagay ko pa dito sa for my birthday. Okay. Yes po. Yes po. You just have to make arrangements. I apologize. You just have to make arrangements with Dion. You have to send him a PM. Thank you kay Ma'am Sarah for your super sticker. Joseph Laguno says, would it be possible na mahabol at makasuhan si Nas even if wala siya dito sa Pilipinas? Pwede ba yan? Hindi na, di ba? Pwede siyang kasuhan, umpisahan yung kaso, pero acquiring jurisdiction over his person will require him nandito na dapat siya. Di ba? Pero ang nakikita ko dito is it's a civil case. not a criminal case. So, notice can be sent to him to his address in Singapore. Kailangan lang patunayan nung nagkakaso that he had received notice of this. So, ganun po sa civil cases. Sa criminal cases, kailangan meron kang jurisdiction over the person. Kailangan maaresto siya. Ito, sabi ni Ronald, ano ko na. Ito, Nuno Hamero says, ang problema kasi minsan kami nga na mga indigenous peoples inaabuso na minsan. Daming research pero wala namang nangyayari sa amin. Lapok pa usahay gyapon amo mga kalsada.
Sira pa yun namin mga kalsada.
Alright. Well, which community are you? Kasi merong iba naman na maliwanag na merong permission pero may dadating na ibang tao at sasabihin, wait, hindi ako natanong. So we have to also figure out that our communities must also agree to a certain procedure para hindi yun pabalik-balik yung mga tao and saying na, bakit biglang meron na naman sumulpot na bagong complainant and so on. But I get what you're saying. Madalas nga po yan nangyayari. Ngayon, dati kasi, hindi lang NCIP ang pagpapaalam din dun sa National Museum for certain areas that are directly under the jurisdiction of the Director of the National Museum. Nagbago na po kasi yung batas, so I'm not sure if solely sa NCIP lang. But the NCIP is the administrative agency. In other words, they cannot agree or disagree for the community. It has to be the community. So, if meron kayong mga problems with regard to researchers and all that, it is the community that must make the manifestation so that meron kayong rules that pertain to your community only. And the NCIP will have no choice but to respect those rules kung sakasakaling pumupunta sa kanila for yung mga administrative permissions and so on. Wala bang COVID violation yung nagpuntahan sa airport? Bakit ito pinag-uusapan? Hindi ko po alam yung issue na yan. Alan Joel Aniceto says, pasensya na po, pero tanong ko lang ano po mangyayari sa PDP laban. Pagka nasa issue tayo, sisingilin din kaya ng BIR si Nas kasi ginagamit niya PH sa mga videos niya at siya lang ang nakikinabang. Thanks po. But the BIR has to do is create rules like a memorandum order para maliwanag para dun sa mga foreign bloggers na how they're going to pay their income taxes based on income that's generated in the country. So kailangan din siguro, katulad sa US, merong kasunduan yung kanilang internal revenue with YouTube. So sa YouTube, automatic sila yung withholding agent when i-withhold nila yung taxes that are due from income coming from the United States. So para dun sa mga nag-YouTube, yung mga YouTube vloggers, napansin nyo, nagbago yung rules tapos merong pina-fill up na form yung YouTube. Yun yung kailangan, 'di ba you had to fill up that form para to approve na yung income that is generated from the US, let's say yung mga nagbibigay ng super sticker and super chat doon sa US, kakaltasan na nila kaagad ng due for the taxes. Baka si Manny tinutukoy ni Grace, dumating na ang self-proclaimed president ng PDP laban. Okay, pero sige, mamaya na yan. Watching from Iloilo City si Ma'am Karen. Okay. Sa paggawa ng contract, sabi ni HR James, Filipino ba gumawa o foreign? Kung Filipino, may pananagutan din ba sila? Wala naman po. Kasi nga, largely, this is a civil case. So what does it mean? Pagka ikaw ang nag-draft ng contract, tapos ini-interpret na, sasabihin ng court, dahil strict liability ba to? Hindi naman yung gumagawa ng kontrata, tapos wala namang choice yung tao na pumipirma, what we call a contract of adhesion. Kasi itong kay Nas Daily na contract, sabi niya pare-pareho yung kontrata na binibigay nila sa lahat ng kanilang mga lecturers. in which case it becomes what we call a contract of adhesion. Ang contract of adhesion means wala itong negotiations, take it or leave it lang. Kapag ikaw ang gumawa ng contract of adhesion, and it's a take it or leave it sort of thing, and the court is going to make a decision based on the contract will be interpreted strictly against the person or the party who drafted the contract. So, in this case, it would be against Sinanas. Sir Bobby says, so many instances of rules being announced without the implementing procedures. Therefore, it creates a lot of questions and confusion. Yun nga eh. Or dapat rin kasi, what they do is they abide by the publication rule. Meaning, once it's published, it's as though it was announced already and everybody should know about it. Okay, long-time follower of Karambola, Luminous, and Tambayan. First time maka-join live. Hi kay Sir Kuya Dan. Ano na? Okay. Okay, next topic. Right? Ano yung next topic natin? Pinost namin yung kay Lieutenant Colonel Ruben Guinolbay. And what I want to do is show you part of the reason why we consider him modern day hero. Thank you. We consider him a modern day hero. Hang on. Window. Okay, Chrome tab. This one. Okay. I hope you can see this. Yan. Ifugao Scout Ranger Officer Ruben Guinolbay recommended for AFP Medal of Valor. He's recommended and in fact actually nominated for the Medal of Valor. Pero naaalala niyo yung Siege of Lamitan? This was one of the legs ng diba? Yung mga hostages dito were kidnapped from yung resort sa Palawan. Do you remember? Basta the resort in Palawan kasama dito sina Gracia Burnham and so on. So they were kidnapped. Dos Palmas. So they were kidnapped from there, and this was one of the kumbaga stopovers. Pumunta they retreated to the hospital in Lamitan. Then at the time, ang rangko niya kapitan, si Captain Guinolbay was taking his Scout Ranger class on its test mission. Yung test mission, yung last requirement before graduation. So he was taking them on the test mission. Papunta pa lang sila, nakasakay siya sa jeep, no? Yung army jeep. Tapos, may driver siya, biglang inambush sila ng Abu Sayyaf na binabantayan nila kasi yung ospital. And that first initial volley, patay yung driver niya and three of his men. So he was able to jump out, na organize niya yung mga tao niya, yung mga troops niya, and then later on launched a counter-attack. Sa tagal nila at sa tindi ng bakbakan, he called for reinforcements. May nagdala ng, tangke? I think Second Lieutenant or First Lieutenant Kenneth Bolong. So he arrived para kasi natatrap sina Gino doon sa si Captain Guinolbay in a certain area. They needed reinforcements. Dumating si Lieutenant Bolong and they were able to move out, pero ultimately natamaan ng parang rocket launcher yata yung tumama dun sa tangke, and he was killed in action. So but if you look dito dun sa sa nangyari kay Captain Guinolbay, he was responsible for leading his men in the successful rescue of Father Nacorda, who was being held hostage by the group. Naka-rescue pa siya personally ng 2 other people. Bumalik-balik sila. Sinugod nila yung ospital, pabalik-balik siya. And he also went back to get his men who were killed in the volley nung sumusugod sila doon. He personally led his men. In other words, kasi sabi niya, hindi ko kayang utusan yung mga tao ko na sumugod at salubungin yung mga bala nang hindi ako kasama kasi you're asking them to die for you. So sabi niya, siya yung nag-lead. Siya mismo yung nandun sa harap, leading his men to attack the hospital and take out some of the hostages. Guinolbay personally dragged many of his men to safety and ministered to the wounded. 4 of his men died on his shoulder and 3 of them asked his permission to die. Yun nga yung famous last words, permission to die, sir. And the last danger was hit in the head, was carried by Captain Guinolbay while putting back the brains of the dead ranger in his own pocket. I suppose that was, yung situation then. He did not order his men to hold the line. Ito kasi, there was an order. Kaya nagkaroon ng investigasyon later on. There was an order to hold the line, wag niyong sugurin yung ospital, which led to the suspicions that the kidnappers were allowed to get away. Later on na sila uli nahuli, much later. That led to the congressional investigation where he was saying na para kaming napain doon because before they arrived in Lamitan kung san-san pa sila dapat kung san-san sila pinapunta, there were several orders to transfer here, transfer there, and so on, and then they finally ended up in Lamitan. Ang tingin ko, there was some kind of miscommunication na padala siya doon. And that was one of the reasons kung bakit nahalata na, teka, bakit nakatakas pa rin, samantalang dead end dapat yung ospital. Apparently, there was a rear exit. It was locked, but eventually something like that unlocked. And wala pong nakabantay doon. As a matter of fact, Captain Guinolbay and his men were there for 2 days. Tuloy-tuloy po yung bakbakan nila. He had the good fortune that there was media for the first part or the first day dun sa bakbakan nila, dun sa exchange of gunfire. So na-document yung kanyang heroism, his bravery and all that. At hindi siya later on napagbintangan na siya yung nagpakawala dun sa mga kidnappers. To this day, now Lieutenant Colonel Guinolbay, who is supposed to be up for promotion, has not been awarded the Medal of Valor. I understand na nung dinideliberate ito ng mga generals, many of them still carried a grudge kasi may mga lumitaw na mga pangalan who suddenly fell under suspicion. Dahil nga, misteryoso na nakawala yung mga kidnappers after Captain Guinolbay's men paid the ultimate price for it. And ang tagal nila doon. Isang kwento ni now Colonel Guinolbay was just before sinugod nila yung hospital, which was a last-ditch effort. Sinugod niya as against the order to hold the line, sinugod nila, nagbibilangan sila ng bala. Ang sabi nga niya, pito-pito yung code term nila. Of course, may bala pa yung mga tao niya. Pero yung remaining, he distributed among his men, pito sa'yo, pito sa'yo, pito. It became a pito-pito thing. But they could no longer stay, hindi na po tenable yun. So sinugod nila yung hospital and that's how nagkabistuhan nga nitong mga malaking misteryo kung paano nakawala yung mga kidnappers when they later on ended up somewhere else. So pero may mga na-rescue na mga hostages. Tapos mas kinilala ng Inquirer si Pabust bilang Philippine of the Year kesa ang mga sundalong namatay habang nakikipaglaban sa mga terorista sa Marawi noon. Sino po yung commander-in-chief noon? Si Pinoy nang nangyari yung hostage taking? ERAP, Kasi ERAP ng una. Pero nung congressional investigation, much later, I think si Gloria na po. Okay, I'm trying to choose the comments that are, sabi ni Dutalias, what about SAF 44? Are they not considered modern-day heroes? Bakit? Just because I mentioned some other people, does that mean that I have excluded them? Bakit naman po ganyan yung tanong? Hindi naman po namin binabaliwala yung sa SAF 44. Pero let's face it, itong mga binabanggit namin, hindi nga nakakalimutan sila. Si Colonel Almodovar, 'di ba? After Marawi, saan siya inassign? don't naman think na just because we don't mention them, binaano na namin sila, binabaliwala namin sila. We have talked about the SAF 44 and every anniversary of the SAF 44 on Carambola and Tambayan, I read out their names. So wag naman po ganyan. Sabi ni Ma'am Pinay, asking permission to die, that's like asking me to stop CPR on a patient. Masakit mamatayan ng tao na under sa'yo, sundalo man yan o pasyente. And according to Colonel Guinolbay, he personally informed the families. So he did not, he says that was his duty. Sabi ni Lo simply, iba yung feeling pala. Gusto ko umiyak sa sobrang proud sa kanila. Nagbabike ako kaya hanggang tanaw lang ako. Mabuhay mga frontliners, modern day heroes of this time of the pandemic. Yes, okay, yes, I get what you're saying. But what I'm saying here is that we cannot mention everybody. There are others who are mentioning medical frontliners and so on. Luminous has chosen to highlight itong si Colonel Mon Almodovar and Colonel Guinolbay because matagal na yung nila, yung kanilang mga achievements and accomplishments, and we don't want them to be forgotten. We also personally know them. And while we often hail our medical frontliners in this time of the pandemic, don't you think that other people also deserve to be recognized? Hindi naman po namin sinasabi na walang valor or na hindi sila heroes. We just want to be able to highlight these two right now.
Huwag mo na-explain yung pangna.
Thank you kay Ma'am Marites Lucas. Pang durian candy. Salamat po. Ang daming candy niyan, ha? Bakit po kaya kulang ang traditional media to recognize the sacrifices and heroism of our armed forces? Walang movies or drama like that. I'm not sure. It really depends on their editorial policy. Sabi ni Chev, glad that Attorney Trixie introduces some unsung heroes like Colonel Guinolbay, these soldiers who selflessly sacrificed their lives for the motherland. Sabi ni Ate Liz, thank you for making them known. Thank you very much to these soldiers and nice knowing about them. Relentless, Scout Ranger talaga ang pinapadala dyan kasi sila yung pinaka-elite sa military. Ang pangit po kasi pakinggan na pinapain daw. Let's admit it, they are the most capable. Hindi. He didn't mean na bakit sila yung pinadala. He meant na bakit ganun yung sitwasyon. The moment they arrived, inambush sila. In the first instance na na-meet nila yung Abu Sayyaf, 4 kaagad ang namatay kay Captain Guinolbay at the time. Sabi ni Teodulo Almirante Ladub III, Medal of Valor man or wala, to serve the country is the greatest honor. Sabi ni June, pinatakas may sabit na mataas na opisyal na militar. Yes, but nobody was ever held accountable for that. Bumalik si Gracia Burnham to testify about itong sinasabaya. Pero she had only good words to say about the Scout Rangers. Hanggang dun sa pag-rescue sa kanila, may mga kaibigan tayo na mga clients din namin who were involved in the rescue. We can talk about them in another instance. Sabi ni Ian, asa pa tayo sa trad media, nagko-cover yan selective nga, political views nila, yan pang alam nila, di sila kikita sa ads. Engineer Rodolfo Reyes says, inaasahan kong ibabalik ni BBM ang ROTC, CAT at GMRC pag siyang nanalo sa 2022. Yushua, just watching and listening here in Riyadh and been educated much, don't give such nonsense questions to attorney para di magalit. Grabe kayo. Eto, Jade says, kung i-mention natin lahat ng frontliners, baka mamaaos na yung magbabanggit ng mga pangalan nila. Anyways. All right. There was also a request earlier on to talk about ito na ngang Vaccine Express ni Madam Leni. So sige, let's set aside some time for that. Etong si Madam kasi is meron siyang programa nga, yung Vaccine Express. Supposedly, kasi may mga tao siya, may mga medical personnel siya na pwedeng mag-administer ng vaccines. The issue became controversial kasi ang sinasabi niya, yun nga, the Office of the Vice President is helping out in the vaccine rollouts and so on. Pero saan nanggagaling yung mga bakuna niya? By their own admission, sabi ng office nila, sila daw po ay umaasa lang doon sa LGU kasi wala naman din silang quota doon sa bakuna. Wala din naman talagang quota ang ibang mga ahensya because ang talaga nag-distribute niyan at nag-administer niyan is the LGU. So ano ngayon ang value ng kanyang Vaccine Express? Well, as nakikita natin doon sa San Pablo, tama ba, no? San Pablo, no? Sa Laguna, is that na-delay tuloy, na-cancel yung vaccine rollout, ay yung administration ng vaccine to certain people who were scheduled for that day kasi inuna,
Nagpa-picture pa.
ano na,
Nagpa-picture
o yun, bukod sa, yun na nga, naantala niya yung mga dapat i-vaccinate on that day para sa kanyang programa, may picture-picture pa siya. So, ang pinaka-common na description dun sa ginawa niya ay plain and simple na kaipalan lang. Because, okay lang sana kung hindi ka nakakaantala ng ibang tao o sige, magpa-cute ka dyan sa mga cameras and all that. But, that's not the case dito. Nakaantala na siya dun sa LGU. Pero yung LGU nga, bakit din naman nila prioritize si Madam at saka yung program niya as instead of those locals nila, their own constituents na nakapila for that day, nakarehistro for that day. Sabi ni June, wasn't that the same period where a platoon of Marines were brutally ambushed by rebel Muslims or many were beheaded and that sparked speculation of sleeping with the enemy? Iba po yun, yan yung panahon po ni Noy Noy and that is Albarca. Yes, as a matter of fact, in that instance, nagalit si Noy Noy. That was the first instance na merong arriving na mga bodies ng ating, if I'm not mistaken, special forces yun eh. Nung padating sila, they were supposed to arrive in the airport, nagalit pa si Noy Noy at narinig ng mga kamag-anak ng mga namatay as they were arriving na kasalanan ng AFP to. It wasn't that kind. Kasalanan to ng AFP. At yun po ang na-record na first words niya about it ng mga media who were there at the time. So medyo confusing pa kasi right now yung documentation of what happened in Albarca, medyo simple lang. Pumunta sila doon to serve a warrant of arrest dun sa isang kidnapper and the public soon found out na meron palang mga tinatawag na MILF designated territory na binigay na pala ni Presidente Noynoy. Kumbaga, kailangan pa palang magpaalam ang mga law enforcers natin at saka yung mga AFP natin pagpapasok doon sa mga designated areas na yun.
So, paano yan? Hindi Albarca.
Hindi, Albarca. It's the second Albarca. Mamasapan was the same. Kasi 'di ba hindi makapasok supposedly yung head ng peace panel had to negotiate with the other side, the MILF, para makapasok yung mga magre-rescue doon sa ating mga pulis. So, same happened. Yun doon sa Albarca, may beheadings po yun. San Pedro, Laguna po. And even here in Calamba, usap-usapan na rin about pa-epal moves of Mrs. Robredo. Ayan. Diba? So, there are people who may mga gusto na palabasin na parang kabayanihan yung ginagawa ni Madam Leni. Itong panahon ng pandemya, meron siyang programa para mabilis yung rollout. Pero is she really making it faster? Is what she is doing really just for the good of people, or she's just doing this as a springboard to her candidacy? Which reminds us now of what Mar Rojas was doing for Yolanda, supposedly as a springboard to his own presidential candidacy. So hindi nila punto yung tumulong. Punto nila magpa-cute para sa susunod na eleksyon. Yun yung kailangan natin tignan dun sa ginagawa nitong si Madam. Sa totoo lang, I don't mind kung yung local officials they trumpet the success of their own vaccine rollouts. They deserve all the accolades that they can get. hindi biro yung mag-organize ka ng ganyan, mag-organize ka ng registration, tapos magbibigay kayo, mag-administer kayo ng vaccines, remembering that these are time pressured because the vaccines have to be kept under a certain temperature and can only be stored for so long. So you have all of these moving parts that you have to organize. Hindi biro yung ginagawa ng LGU. And then comes in an external third party saying, amin na yung vaccines ninyo, kami yung mag-a-administer kasi may programa kami. Kaloka. Parang mo yung sinasabi na, oh, LGU, hindi ninyo kaya ito. In one particular instance, nag-identify siya ng mga beneficiaries niya dun sa transport sector, which I don't mind. They really should get vaccines. Pero was she really helping? Paano yung ibang tao? Paano yung mga nakarehistro? Nakaantala ka ba dun sa mga programa that was set aside for that day? What about the other people na nakarehistro, nakuha mo yung quota nila, na-delay din po ba yung mga taong yon? Di ba? Sabi ni Chev, ngayon daw sinasamantala na ni Madam ang magreklamo ukol sa record-breaking number of new cases of COVID-19 ngayong araw na ito. Ako, I would not be so quick to blame anybody for the spread of these cases kasi nga may Delta variant at matindi na infectious yung strain na ito. So, you know, if we're doing the same thing, pero the only new factor in the way we're handling the COVID pandemic is the kind of virus that's out there, then you can't blame the government anymore. They're still doing the same thing. It has worked before. It doesn't work so well now because the variant is the one that changed. It's the virus that changed. Ma'am Beth says, hanga pa rin ako sa kanyang sincerity at loyalty sa mga Pilipino at gobyerno sa kanyang pagbibigay ng mga katotohanan na nangyayari. Sinong sinasabi niyo? Kami. Kailangan. June says, in my honest opinion, we should be more concerned with the active cases, mortality rate, and virus variant po. I agree. Kasi, di ba, so far, although tumaas yung number of cases, the mortality, the death rate has remained steady at something like 1% or less than 1%, 0.01. So actually, if we're holding steady at that and hopefully we can even bring it down further, it means that we're actually doing the right thing, even if the cases have increased. Tama po kayo doon. Natatangahan ako, sensya na sa term, sabi ni Ma'am Karen, dun sa nangyari sa cancellation na nakaschedule na vaccines para maka-eksena good term, ang vaccine extra. Bakit pa ika-cancel? Pwede naman isabay, minamadali na nga ng pag-vaccine para matapos na yung mga ECQ, MECQ. Ay ma'am, kaya yan kinancel kasi yung quota para sa araw na yon, yun ang ginamit ni Madam. Bawal po yata mag-skip ng prioritization levels according sa COVAX. Paano po yan? Mapapanagot po ba ang OVP at ang LGU sa pag-skip ng A4 to give way sa pamumulitikang vaccination ni Lugaw? Actually, matinding pinagbabawal yung pag-politicize ng vaccination program, di ba? So, yung pag-skip ng prioritization levels, well, baka yan, kung umabot yan sa, sa World Health, sa COVAX mismo, then hindi na tayo magiging entitled to be able to get from them. Sabi ni Ian, ayan na naman yung epalits na VP na yan, kakasawa na lahat ng publicity stunt niya, hindi pa rin kinakagat ng masa, ay kinagat naman pero puro bash sa kanya. True, I think what they are is deaf to even the most reasonable criticism. Ayun, step up Team Leni, nasa 531,999 ang 1-week FB ad spending from 15 August to 17 August. Uy, talaga? 2 days lang? Nakakabahala. Kung inipon na lang at inantay maging commercially available ang Pfizer, maigi pa. Check FB ad galleries for Team Leni Robredo for the proof. Wow. Laki 2 days. Dito sa Europe, sabi ni Eric, we are looking more sa hospitalization at death rate. Kaya bukas na ang economy kahit mahina. Ang Pinay says, ang Delta variant po ay 1:13 ang rate of infection. Physical distance must be around 4 feet from the usual 2 feet. Kaya ganoon na lang ang rise ng cases. Actually, yung requirement sa atin is 3 feet but I think it should be increased to 6 feet based on the previous studies na nagsasabi na yung rate niya to survive in the air and to float away is something more like 6 feet before nagiging unviable na yung virus. Nikki says, ingat lang sa vaccine ni Madam, walang pakiyan sa care sa vaccine na ituturok sa inyo kung ma-handle yun ng tama. Ang layon lang naman nila publicity para sa candidacy niya, walang kadala-dala mga LP sa style nilang bulok. Ako, I'm concerned. Saan manggagaling yung second dose? Kung LGU pa rin, di lalo niyang ginulo. Kasi ngayon, you have to get the registration of those people na vaccinate under her Vaccine Express and somehow find a way to fit it into the registration of the LGU. So, good luck. Maraming salamat na lang. Okay? Last two questions. Kasi may sakit yung lalamunan ko. Yung mobile vaccine, sabi ni Eugene, dapat ginagawa yan at tulong niya sana sa mga elderly na nahihirapan makapunta sa mga vac centers. That could make more impact on her and on the LGUs. I agree. Handicapped, elderly, and if ever later on, payagan na yung mga under 18 na vulnerable to the Delta variant. Agree with that one. Kelly says, bakit po pinapayagan ang mga tao na bayaran para mag-rally sa gitna ng pandemya? Hindi ko alam kung pinayagan sila because I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have gotten a police clearance or even a mayor's permit. Cooking Dad says, paki-correct po, wala pong vaccine ng OVP. Ang vaccine po is allocated for LGUs and vaccine is from the national government pa din. With this, tandaan mga LGUs na yan, siguradong kaalyado nila yan. Ano po opinion ninyo kay Dr. Liachon na parating nagla-live, atake sa gobyerno at atake pa na bakit hindi doktor ang ginagawang vaccine, sir? Okay, why should I
Duwag yan.
Ayun, I hope you heard that. Louder?
Duwag yan si Dr. Latson. Kinasuhan ko yan nung umatras.
Nga, totoo yan. That's true. Okay. So, I hope you guys get the message by now that we don't want to give attention to people who desperately want it and people who have no opinion that is helpful, di ba? Yung iba papatulan ko kung kunwari the opinion is so wrong that we need to correct the people, we need to give out information so that people won't be misled by that false information or by incorrect opinions that are based on incorrect data or lack data. So, yung mga ganito, bakit natin hina-highlight, di ba? Gusto na nga natin i-ignore itong taong to, so bakit pa natin sila bibigyan ng pansin? We're only giving them another platform. You're giving them our space and time here. Bakit natin ibibigay sa kanila yun? Sabi ni Heaven, I hope Atty. Ahmed can join you soon on your live. I hope you're thinking about what you said. Siguro kung bumagyo ng katangahan, tiyak makakaani si Aling, uy grabe kayo, ng tornado. Sabi ni Ma'am Beth, bakit sobrang tagal naman ng 10-day hotel quarantine plus swab test for the balikbayan travelers since mga fully vaccinated na kami at swab test sa origin and departure country. Then on arrival pa uli sa Pilipinas at 7th day on hotel quarantine, di na makakatulong yan sa economy. Okay, let's get this straight. First of all, even if you're fully vaccinated, you can still get sick and you can still pass it on. That's why we quarantine even the fully vaccinated. Di ba? Ganun lang kasimple yun. You can actually get the vaccine, be completely asymptomatic, and pass it on to somebody else, vaccinated, fully vaccinated, or not. Bakit 10 days? Kasi although you have a negative RT-PCR from your place of origin, in the process of coming here, you could have become infected. Hindi po yun, may incubation period pa yung infection na yun. So, you're quarantined first, and then after so many days, if I'm not mistaken, 4 or 5 days, where the symptoms might manifest, or at least a swab test will be more accurate. So, kukunan po kayo ng swab test after those 4 or 5 days, And then if it comes out negative, then in theory dapat nakakalabas na kayo. Pero ang sinasabi nila baka meron pang period for incubation, baka hindi pa nahuhuli nung time na yan. So you finish the 10-day hotel quarantine period just in case the swab test missed what is still incubating. Ang sinasabi nila, 'di ba, dapat 14 days. So pinaiklian na lang nila as a concession, that's still a compromise. Pero ang sinasabi nila kasi full 14 days supposedly before mag-manifest completely yung mga symptoms. It would have run its course if in 14 days wala talagang symptoms and all that, then there's the possibility of having been infected and passing it on to somebody else is, well, pretty much zero. Maigi pa ang buwan ng dalaw, madalas 3 days lang. Si Leni pag dumadalaw araw-araw nakarepal. Draw simply says nakakabahala na po yung mga misinformed regarding COVID at sa vaccines kasi di daw ito totoo at nananakot lang. Asa na po PCOO? Okay. Well, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm so tired of calling them out. We've called them out before and we've recognized yung mga matitino, masisipag. Of course, USEC yata, si Mon Kualoping, DG siya ng PIA. Of course, former ASEC, now Beneco General Manager Marie Banaag, ASEC Chris Ablan, and so on. These people have been so hardworking. Ayoko nang birahin yung PCOO. I think everybody knows where they have failed and where they have succeeded. So, medyo kicking a dead horse na po yan eh. Noli Castro says, totoo yung dami sinabi ni Doc Tiachon. Bakit di na lang siya ipalit kay Duque? Mukhang madami naman siyang alam. Pabida, tingnan natin kung ano kaya niya. Anong kaya niya. Unfortunately, he does not have the trust and confidence of the president. Yun po yung pinakamatinding qualification na kailangan para maging appointed ka to a cabinet position. Dun sa, nun pa lang, nung consultant siya, sabi ng mga nasa IATF, nagpe-press release siya or he would talk about yung mga nangyayari during those conferences and then he would talk about it or, nagpapabida siya masyado. Hindi siya team player. So, that will be the primary reason why he might not get a cabinet position, at least not in the near future. Ang lakas niya pa naman magputak ng putak laban sa president pero siya mismo walang nagawang tama kahit nga sa mismong lugar niya. Inuuna kasi ang pamumulitika kaysa sa kapakanan ng lahat. Hindi ko po sure alam kung sino yung sinasabi natin dito. Joy says, lahat ba nang galing abroad kina-quarantine? Puro OFW kasi ang nababalitaan ko. Kina-quarantine din ba yung gaya ni Senator Pacquiao and family? Nag-abroad din sila, di ba? Oo nga naman. That's actually a good question. An excellent question. I haven't seen, but I think dapat at the very least home quarantine, di ba? Thank you kay Arafat Pukaan. Please make a good case for Sarah for her to run for the presidency in the next elections. Well, I'm sure nakikinig naman si Mayor Sara dun sa daing ng mga tao na tumakbo siya and that she's taking this into consideration. Wala naman akong illusion na kaya kong i-persuade si Mayora na hindi naman tayo ganun. We're not even I don't think she even knows I exist. So, the best thing we can do is to, highlight yung ginagawa ng mga nasa Run Sara Run, which is in fact one of the reasons why we're here in Davao. Ludwig Chris Duena says, I have been an OFW my entire adult life. I've never been treated this best from the time I arrived at my final destination to my locality. OFW is grateful to the government for making us felt needed, important, and appreciated. I like that. Twin talaga ng LP ang US Democrats, sabi ni Sir Bobby. Pare-pareho ng style. Comment from a friend in the US. Ian says, I agree, pero bakit si VP laging napag-uusapan dito sa space ng Luminous pero di pa din nabibenta? Nega pa din. Well, yun na nga. Hindi kasi, I think yung mga nagtutulak sa kanya, they just don't have a really good product, diba? If you're going to sell her, it's going to be difficult kung magre-rely ka lang dun sa publicity. Pero yung produkto mo, 'di ba? Basic ano yan eh, 'di ba sa marketing? Madali yung market kung maganda yung produkto mo. Siya mismo po, wala siyang pinapakita na improvement. 'Di ba? Ano ba naman yung mag-aral ka tungkol dun sa gusto mong i-publicize, dun sa magsasalita ka sa programa mo sa radyo, puro yung sa akin lang, puro super safe na hindi naman walang sustansya. So sayang yung platform niya, sayang yung fact na marami parating nagre-report sa kanya. Meron siyang pagkakataon makapagpalaganap ng matinding impormasyon, mag-educate ng mga tao kahit dun mismo sa kanilang mga liberal values. She can talk about LGBT. Ang problema sa kanya puro pa soundbite lang, sasabihin niya ito dapat ganito yung sa LGBT, but she has no means, she has no hindi niya pinag-iisipan ito ng malalim. Kasi kung tutuusin yung mga statements niya that look really stupid, may basis yun. Halimbawa yung sinasabi niya may rape kasi may rapist. Totoo naman yan. What she's saying actually is something that she doesn't understand. Kaya tumigil siya dun sa soundbite na yun. Pero ang sinasabi, ang talagang yun, ang doktrina or yung thought behind that is this, that you cannot blame the victim. You cannot blame how she walks, how she talks, her past or her clothes and all that. She is not responsible for her rape. The person responsible for her rape is the rapist. There was an opportunity for her to tell people about this particular idea so that mas lumaganap yun. But hindi, she stopped at the soundbite. Para sa kanya, para sa akin, yung pinapakita niya is shortcuts. Akala ba nila na pwede kang maging presidente kung puro ganyan lang, half-hearted, half-baked yung ideas? Imbis na ipalaganap niya yung higher awareness about rape and how the victims are victimized over and over again, di nakatulong siya. Pero hindi, tumitigil siya sa ganon. Di ba? Her statement about hindi sakop ng trabaho ng pagka-VP ang mag-audit. Wala naman sinabi ng presidente na isusuplant niya yung COA. COA talaga dahil sa constitution yan. Pero walang nagsasabi, walang law na nagbabar na mag-conduct ng separate audit ang kahit sino mang tao provided na inapprove yan ng presidente or ng kongreso. So, 'di ba? What is she talking about? Kung tutuusin, pwedeng soplayin talaga si Madam Leni at sabihin, Madam, yung vaccine express mo, hindi rin yan sakop ng Office of the Vice President. Madam, yung baby hugging mo, yung paghawak-hawak mo dun sa mga nagpa-vaccinate, hindi rin po yan sakop ng trabaho ng vice presidente. Ang trabaho lang ayon sa ating saligang batas ng isang vice presidente ay intayin ma-incapacitate ang presidente so you can step in. You are the spare tire. Ngayon, wala rin naman sinasabi yung batas na wala kang pwedeng ibang gawin. Kaya sinabi rin dun sa saligang batas na, Madam, pwede ka ba kang ma-appoint na cabinet rank, cabinet secretary of something. Kaya ka nga na-appoint dun sa housing. Pero pwede ka rin ma-appoint doon sa hindi cabinet rank. Kaya nilagay ka dun sa dangerous drugs board. That is not a cabinet level position, does not appear in the Constitution. Pero Madam, hindi rin nga yan sakop talaga ng trabaho ng Vice President. And yet, when you were appointed, you undertook that job. So stop talking about yung sakop ng Office of the Vice President. Baka balikan kayo ng idea na yun. So yun yan. Sorry if I kind of went off rail. Yun. Sabi ni Eugene Agustin, Leni Lugaw is a 5-second trendsetter, 4-second fame, and you forget about it in the 5th second. Ito, sabi ni So Crazy, baka ang role po niya sa vaccination ay pagpisil-pisil sa braso. Di ba dapat bawal yun? Ito, sabi ni Heaven uli, since nabanggit na po about vaccines, would they consider po kaya in the near future na instead quarantine ng isang balikbayan for 10 days ay antigen na lang pagdating dito sa Philippines since vaccinated na sila sa ibang bansa like the US. Sayang din po kasi in 20 days upon arrival and before leaving the country. Naiintindihan ko po yun, pero you also have to take into consideration the incubation period of the virus. Alam niyo, sa totoo lang, kung pwede, di ba? Antigen ka upon arrival, tapos mag-ano ka na, mag-home quarantine ka na. Ako, I would have preferred that. Pero yung sinasabi nila is kailangan ma-monitor kayo in case the symptoms develop during that period. Sabi ni Nolly Castro, feel na feel doon. Feel niya yung inis. Oo. Ako talaga, that's what we need to watch out for. Halimbawa, i-compare mo naman yung interview namin dito kay BBM with the interview of, with the way Leni Robredo talks. She'll give you a soundbite and then she has, what, 3 sentences after that. Tapos na. Yun na yun. Nasabi niya parang compliance lang. Ito yung nire-require ng PR mo. Look at how BBM develops the idea. 'Di ba, sasabihin niya, itong gusto kong unahin, agriculture. Halimbawa, kailangan ganito, kailangan ingat-ingat tayo sa importations, dinidevelop natin yung local capacities natin, and so on and so on. So you see, he takes the idea and he expands it. At alam mo na pinag-aaralan niya, hindi lang yung issue itself, yung policies around it, yung doctrines behind it, and the facts that have led him to the conclusion that he must undertake this. So, 'di ba, if we're looking for a candidate, then we need to have a candidate that is not so superficial. 'Di ba? And I apologize to anybody who gets offended by my saying that the vice president appears to be superficial. But, res ipsa loquitur, that's exactly how she comes across. She doesn't develop any ideas. She doesn't create any real awareness. She'll give you a soundbite about things that are so important, like rape culture and so on. And she does not develop it. And so what happens? It becomes merely a political statement, and you're right, forgotten after 5 seconds. And so what about the victims? Nagbanggit ka lang, nagpaasa ka lang dito sa mga to, but you did not actually help. 'Di ba? Gusto niyang pag-usapan yung drug war, halimbawa. What did she say? In the early years of the drug war, anong sinabi niya? Nagbigay kami ng mga abogado, pero wala talaga kasing ebidensya. And then you stop there. O ngayon, pinipilit ninyo sa ICC na merong kaso with the president. Kayo nga na nandito, maaari niyong tulungan yung mga victims if they do exist. And assuming natin na they do actually exist, what did you do to help them? Anyway, she's super very I don't want to end on that note, di ba? Kasi nakakairita lang that there is no depth when she has such power. She has so many venues to talk about things that matter, to educate people. 'Di ba? Kaya niyang magpakarga ng balita tungkol sa kanya in any trad media. Meron pa siyang radio program. Pero hindi, ang ginagawa niya para siyang bulaklak na kailangan na surrounded by leaves and all of that. But basically just sits there and tries to look pretty. Flowers have more value because it's its own reason for existence. Siya hindi niya ma-justify yung pagka-vice president niya. Sabi ni Bench McNabbs, she has the great platform. Actually, totoo yan. She has so many opportunities and she squanders them by reducing it to simply political statements. Sayang. 'Di ba? Even talking about ito pandemya. Yung mga ganyan, instead of talking about, sana intindihan nyo na kailangan yung mga ganitong quarantines because this is how the virus develops and so on. O wag po kayo, instead, sinasabi niya, dapat magpabakuna ang lahat. Smile! Bakit, madam? Okay? Why isn't she talking about herd immunity? Why isn't she talking about vaccine hesitancy? Why isn't she telling people na, LGU, paano namin kayo tutulungan? Can we just provide you with doctors and so on and whatever? No, hindi. She has to have her own program. Kailangan siya yung star. Pa-cute masyado. And, and now, nang lumalabas na her followers want her to run for president. Really? After 5 years of squandering every opportunity to take up a cause and stick to it, or to take up a cause and create awareness for it, you did nothing but make political statements and try to take the president down. Well, figuratively. Diba? I mean, why are we even, the only reason I'm talking about this is because with the coming elections, how can people actually say, that she's even a candidate worth considering? Ewan. And now with the supposedly conference between Senator Manny and Madam Leni, now we have two people who have the same approach, 'di ba? What about Senator Manny talking about corruption and then saying, oh, ito nalagap ko. And then he tosses it to the Blue Ribbon Committee and that's it. For him, he has done something by receiving supposedly evidence of corruption, then tossing it to the Blue Ribbon. He has every opportunity to talk about these cases, to insist on prosecution of these cases, to help people find out the bad guys who are doing this. No, instead, you announce that, okay, I found corruption, here are the documents, I am giving them to Blue Ribbon, bahala na sila. Ano yun? 'Di ba? The only person who got any publicity there was himself, but there are no issues that gained any, people are not becoming aware of any corrupt issues.
Ayan, walats tuloy.
Kaya, well, ayan, na nakakainis lang na you waste, you squander all these opportunities when you could very well have used it for so much good. Bloggers, okay? There's so many bloggers who have such good material, but limited because you can only say so much about you can only spread so much because what you have is social media, what you have is internet based, and then yun na yun, 'di ba, hanggang doon. But the people who have access to trad media, instead of using it for something that's actually good, ay hindi, 'di ba, hindi nagagamit para sa ganun. Okay. Grabe, dinumog naman tayo ng mga spammers ngayon. Kakaloka. Hang on, I'm deleting them. Don't worry. Okay. And last few... Ano ba to? Daming spammers. Sometimes I wonder about Facebook and how come they're not policing all of these spammers, 'di ba? Report ka ng report pero sige, tuloy-tuloy pa rin. Ang dami pa ring spammers, ang dami pa ring pumapasok dito sa news feeds, 'di ba? Eto, finally, sabi ni Wang yan, ako hindi ko masikmura yung diskarte ni Leni, parang nakakabobo lang ang tingin pa rin sa mga Pilipino, madaling utuin. Sadly, marami naman talagang nauuto pa rin. Ako, I disagree. I disagree with that. I don't think na maraming nauuto. The problem is that what they want to do also is deprive people of other opinions. Kaya nga, tingnan mo, two-pronged yung approach nila. Merong Madam Leni taking in all of the trad media and having a virtual monopoly of that one. And then they want to silence us. So pansinin nyo si Senator Manny, he's complaining about people na sinisiraan siya and all of that. But isn't that, di ba, par for the course? You're a public official, then you should expect that people will be critical of you. Because it's part of our duties as citizens to call him out. After all, the power that you yield came from us. You have power simply because we voted for you. And no, hindi kasama dun sa boto namin yung sabihin namin sa'yo na promise we're not going to say anything bad about you. That's not how it goes. Ang worry ko is that Senator Manny isn't aware completely of why there are checks and balances, why the freedom of speech checks them, public officials who exercise their power simply because we gave it to them. Nakakalimutan yata nila yung pagbabalanse ng power dito sa Pilipinas. Okay, thank you very much para sa lahat ng mga sumali dito, sa lahat ng nagbigay ng super chat and super stickers. Pasensya na if I can't rant further kasi sumasakit na yung lalamunan ko. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be joining Karambola in the morning. Para naman para may kasama si Boss Conrad. So we'll be on Karambola tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Huwag niyo pong kakalimutan, subaybayan yun. Don't forget to like and share with this video. And thank you very much para sa lahat na nandito. Tulog na para makaabot na, para makagising para sa Karambola bukas. Maraming salamat, everybody. Oy, ingat-ingat ha. Nakakahawa yung Delta variant.